Welcome to the CodeBreaker Mindset, where leaders share the unwritten rules for success. I'm your host, Chitra Nawbatt. Joining us today is Bruce Chinn, recently retired President and CEO of Chevron Phillips Chemical Company. Bruce, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Chitra. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I really look forward to our conversation today, and hopefully I'll be able to add some perspective for the CodeBreaker Mindset.
Well, how does it feel to be recently retired?
Oh, it's a good place to be. I tell people that I'm busy but not stressed.
So coming out of Chevron Phillips Chemical Company, let's talk about that, right? Roughly $15 billion in revenue. What is this company about, and how is it different from competitors like Dow Chemical and ExxonMobil Chemical?
Sure. You kind of laid out kind of the revenue basis. It's a company that is a polyethylene and chemical company. It also has a pipe division, which makes high-density polyethylene pipe. It is a bit smaller than Dow and Exxon Chemical and Lyondell, another competitor, but about the same size, maybe a little bit larger than Nova Chemical and Westlake, another common competitor. And of course, there are European competitors and Asian competitors. The joint venture, it is a joint venture between Chevron and Phillips 66, 50-50 joint venture. And it's a company that's been in existence for 25 years, which in itself is fairly unusual for a joint venture to last that long.
What does it do? Tell us about the stakeholders, the products, the services,
Absolutely.
Because I think petrochemicals is something it's hard for people to relate to, yet petrochemicals is literally in everything, in our clothing, in this, like in everything. So
yeah, you kind of laid it out.
What does this company actually do?
So we make, the primary product is high-density polyethylene. We also make something called low-density polyethylene. But those two products go into supply chains, as you said it, that feed our everyday life, whether it's in automotive and medical components or in household products, packaging that carries cleaning fluids, detergent, the grocery store. When you think about the grocery store and the things that are in packaging in the grocery store, bread bags, bags that contain fruit, vegetables, blow molded cans for coffee, you name it. Shrink wrap around when you go and buy bottled water. So it's just a pretty versatile product that's used across many supply chains.
Who's your customer? Who buys it?
Well, we have typically, the supply chain works this way. So you typically will sell to what they call a converter. That converter then takes the polyethylene and then converts it to a shape. It could be different processes, blow molding, injection molding, into the products that use it. And then they sell that down the value chain to sometimes people that put things together. Also, they can sell to the brand companies, right? So whether it might be ones that are familiar to you, like Procter & Gamble or PepsiCo, or different types of companies that actually sell to the consumer.
So you've been in this industry for 45 years. I don't know too many little boys and girls out there who dream of getting into petrochemicals, but how did this come about? And not only have you been in the industry 45 plus years, you also sit on a couple of public company boards, Waste Management, but another petrochemical company, Celanese.
Yes.
So
I grew up in a little small town down Interstate 69, south of Houston, about a couple hours south of Houston. Went to Texas A&M University, majored in chemical engineering, and I began my career with the DuPont Company and worked in the DuPont Company for about 20 some odd years, then moved to another company that actually acquired the business that I was in called Koch Industries, and they formed a business called Invista, and stayed with them about a year. We can talk later about that pivot, and then went to work for Chevron. And worked in various roles in all of those companies, all the way progressing through layers of management, ending up as a plant manager, and then went on to run some businesses in both DuPont and in Chevron.
let's get into the rules of the game, because I would imagine there's a lot of rules in this industry. What's the top tailwind in the industry right now and tailwind for Chevron Phillips Chemical?
Well, it's interesting because I think both the tailwind and can be a headwind really is fundamental economic growth. For this industry to grow, it has grown based upon consistent demand growth over time, both domestically and in globally in other countries. China being a very big part of that growth. Obviously, with some of the retraction in China economically, that's now a bit of a headwind as that demand has slowed down a bit. But it's all about engaging the customer, understanding the needs, innovating along the way, and then clearly being competitive as you compete against your competitors out there and the best serve your customer needs.
So what's the unwritten rule on how you navigate that? That you've used to navigate that?
You know, for me, I think even in my time in DuPont and in it really is, and they don't teach you this in school, right? But it's about the relationships you form, right? It's engaging not only with peers, subordinates, superiors, your suppliers, your partners, all of those folks along that value chain that helps unlock value and opportunity, I think is really building those relationships and learning how to both give and take and satisfy those needs along your value chain.
Is there a consistent written rule as well as unwritten rule that has served you in your career? Because to be 45 years in an industry and to also achieve the highest level, which is president and CEO of a well-known brand in the space, written rule, unwritten rule, critical to your leadership success?
Yeah, I would say that I don't know if it's written, but it's clear no matter what company I've worked in, whether I've been on the petrochemical side, the refining side, it's about excellence, okay? Mediocrity is a career staller. And I don't know if enough young people recognize the need to not just be there, but be impactful. And so that's really, really important, I think, along a career. And for me, the unwritten one is really around learning, right? Being willing to learn, to step out there, understanding and getting guidance sometimes on when you need to take some risk, try some new things, take on a big challenge. I think all of those are important to progressing in a career and really impacting the business and even more importantly, people along the way.
Let's get into the mediocrity. And it's funny, you mentioned it unprompted. You wouldn't have known this because I didn't tell you in advance, but wrote a book, The CodeBreaker Mindset. And one of the things I talked about in the book is status quo is not your friend.
That's right.
So the fact that you talk about mediocrity, how did you do it for yourself or encourage your teams to not just follow the status quo, to not just be quote unquote mediocre, especially in an industry like yours, so highly regulated where there's a lot of regimentation, I would imagine. And so how does one...
Well, I mean, I think that part of it is that you don't do it alone. So that's a big key of it is right building the right team that really understands, you know, how to accept challenges, how to put challenges in front of an organization and strive to be a little bit better. I mean, one of my mantras has always been, hey, we're good, but we can be better, right? And it's always about setting that kind of big, hairy goal out there in front of the organization and aspirationally go out. You may not reach there, but even in that aspiration and the journey, you probably achieve more than you would have if you didn't put a goal like that out in front of the team and give them the tools to be able to go and achieve it.
So inevitably in everything you just described, it gets into this notion of pivot. So let's talk about the pivots. What's a significant business pivot you've led?
Yeah. So the word significant is kind of interesting. I call them maybe shifts. And one that comes to mind for me is when I was the president of Chevron overnight along my journey, which is the only chemicals business at the time left in Chevron. And it was really working with my team and nudging and encouraging and enabling them to kind of break out of kind of the innovation in the areas that we'd focused on and begin. The overnight business, let me explain that a bit. is a really lubricant additives business. So it's a chemical business that gets, the chemicals that we produce get added to lubricants to give them specific properties. And it always been in automotive, marine, trains, mobility kinds of areas. And with the advent of EVs, we had to begin to think about that a bit differently, right? And how do we go and gather data? How do we engage with customers? What were the automakers telling us about where their needs were? And really then giving them the tools, a bit of money, to really go explore that and begin to develop products that were sufficient for the electric vehicle market.
How do you spot signals? And what are the signals in your business?
Well, I think I'll speak generally.
And talk a little also too about the rate of pace, like the rate of change.
Yeah, and it depends. It depends on which particular part of the market that you're working in. The petrochemicals have been around, polyethylene has been around a long time, but technology has shifted over the years, right? And I think what's important is that engagement with customers, understanding their needs, and being able to partner with them to develop product innovations that really help them to serve their customer needs. But the cost competitiveness and pressures on businesses in the oil and refining and petrochemical industry continue to be there. Whether it's the labor arbitrage that happens between domestically in the U.S. and other parts of the world, there are things you have to overcome to do that. And so you have to constantly innovate, whether it's a catalyst system in a reactor, things that make your product less expensive to make and allows you to compete in the world out there.
Talk about the energy transition and petrochemicals are along that continuum, going from traditional sources to what will be the future, and where does AI come in? Are we ever going to be at a place where the AI can help us get petrochemical ingredients out of water?
I don't think so. Those fundamentals, I don't think exist. There are some things with respect to energy production, what is called green energy, that'll let you, produce hydrogen, which leads to other. But right now, they don't scale very well, right? And so there continues to be a need for a balance of energy supplies, whether it's from fossil fuel, wind, solar, nuclear, which a lot of people don't talk about, but there's a lot of work going on now with respect to how do we kind of shrink the footprint of nuclear reactors, and they call them small nuclear reactors, small modular nuclear reactors, and still get that kind of cleaner energy out of that, right? And so there's all kinds of things there. And businesses like the petrochemicals business look to tap into those kinds of things to power their facilities.
So artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the new norm. Where is artificial intelligence being used at scale? And maybe bring it to life using Chevron Phillips.
Yeah,
where there's heavy investment.
There's a couple examples that I would use. It's in the research arena, right? For years, scientists would do research and they'd put their knowledge into these data books. Well, we've learned the digital has taken us to a point where we've digitalized those data books, and AI lets us innovate faster. In other words, think through the different, say, constructs of materials in a way that we are looking to solve problems, and we solve those a lot faster. Another use case that I've seen both in the petrochemical side and from a view on my board is around logistics. The ability to move product at scale, but be able to take data and look at traditional patterns for trains, how they come into your facility, the rail cars you use, the ability to move those around, and basically end up improving the productivity of people like the yard master who's managing all of that, and they get to spend more time engaging the frontline employees and helping them solve their problems versus, trying to go chase things that, the computer lets us and AI lets us solve a lot faster. Another use case, real quickly, is in the logistics business around trucks, how you move trucks around, how you do route planning, and just improve that process and have a huge productivity impact.
Does serendipity have a role at all in your business journey? And I want to get into the magic, which is, how do you define serendipity, and where has serendipity played a significant role in a business outcome?
Well, I mean, I think that serendipity, and I think a business outcome as, are you producing what you need to produce? Are you meeting the customer need? And the demand's there, and you can meet that demand and help that customer grow, and therefore you grow. So it's what I call, when all the circumstances in a situation align, that you have great outcomes. And serendipity, for me, examples are coming out of post-COVID and the ability to run your facilities well when the public needed product. You were able to be very reliable, and you delivered that product when you needed to. You have a winter storm Uri hit, and supply chains are locked up, power goes out, and so your ability to work your way through that and have the right people at the right time with the right skills, for me, that's a bit of serendipity, because it doesn't always work that way. And so from a business outcome.
Where has serendipity played a critical role in your career journey?
It's very similar.
To
me, it's being in the right place at the right time with those circumstances, and having both the experience and the skills that align with that opportunity. And that played a role for me in terms of being in the right place at the right time to go into the president of Chevron Chemicals and Chevron Overnight. And it played a role in really being at the right place, right time, when the opportunity to be the president CEO of Chevron Phillips. So to me, that is a part of that.
And when you talk about the right place at the right time, I want to dip back to something you talked about with respect to artificial intelligence, which is petrochemical industry. Is it at that juncture where embracing artificial intelligence at scale, beyond just research and development, but even in terms of manufacturing or operational processes, is it at a point yet where AI is critical? The earlier headwind you talked about is economic growth, right? And so is it at a point where it is urgent, the adoption of that technology? Your perspective and the quantification of the benefits.
Yeah, I think that there are probably some of us in the industry that are probably more advanced in terms of taking that learning journey and gotten to a point where it is very integral into how they do business. It's not there for everybody at this point, but I think it's becoming a tool, and that's in fact, that's the way I look at it. It is a tool to deliver value, right? And that's the mindset that I always tried with respect to digital work, AI work, is to say, let's talk about the value. We got to play a little bit to learn and experiment, but in the end, it's got to be about value. You just can't pour money down a hole and invent crazy things with AI that are doing these kind of things, but if it's not delivering value for the people, for the stakeholders that finance your business, for the shareholders that buy your stock, that's, to me, where the criticality of AI will continue to be an important part.
In your public boards, Waste Management, Celanese, what's the dialogue around the impact of AI?
Oh, we spend probably not every board meeting, but there are board meetings where we dedicate time to understanding both the opportunities and also the risk for the business. And what are we doing to take advantage of those opportunities? Are we really enabling the organization? Is the leadership and management really understanding the trends in a way that they can apply those in a company like Celanese or Waste Management? And so it is something, AI is something that we have spent time on as a board, really discussing and trying to understand it for ourselves. At the same time, both encouraging the leadership and management because we're not in a doing role. We're clearly in a governance and oversight role and an enabling and support role to encourage them to do what makes sense and to be really, I call it, smart about it.
Bruce, what's your advice on how to cultivate the CodeBreaker mindset?
I think it is curiosity, right? And it is being willing to both explore, I think, organizationally, what's out there, what are the barriers and opportunities, how you work yourselves around that. But it's also embracing, I call it your authentic self, as you find yourself in situations and putting that authentic coat on and wearing it well, because invariably, whether it's a business opportunity or it's a personal growth opportunity from a role or an organization, you will hit those barriers, and you have to really be authentic about how you are willing to learn from it, how you're willing to share with others, how you're willing to take in information. And the last one that I would say, self-observation. And that ability to self-observe yourself and the people around you is really how you explore, I think, what you mean in the CodeBreaker mindset.
Bruce, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. It's my pleasure, Chitra.
Thank you for supporting the CodeBreaker Mindset. For more episodes, go to www.chitranawbatt.com to like and subscribe. Connect with me on social media at Chitra Nawbatt.